History of my oldest ancestors of whom I am very proud descend. June 20th, 840, dies Louis I, the Pious, my 36th grandfather, 22 times my grandfather, Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, King of the Franks, King of Aquitaine, son of Emperor Charlemagne. Louis I, the Pious, Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, King of the Franks, King of Aquitaine, born in Cassenurial on April 16, 778 and died in Hessen, Ingelheim on June 20, 840, was the son of Charles Magnus, Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, and Hildegard of Vinchgau, Queen of the Franks, paternal grandson of Pepin the Short, King of the Franks, and Bertha de Lane, and maternal grandson of Gerald I of Vinchgau, Count of Anglichgau and Emma of Alemannia. Louis I, also known as Louis the Pious or Louis the Just, was king of the Franks and Holy Roman Emperor from 814 until his death. As the only surviving adult son of Charlemagne and Hildegard of Vinchgau, he became the sole ruler of the Franks upon his father's death in 814, a position he held until his death, save for the period 833 to 834, during which he was deposed. During his reign in Aquitaine, Louis was charged with the defense of the empire's southwestern border. He conquered Barcelona from the Muslims on April 3, 801, and asserted Frankish authority over Pamplona and the Basques south of the Pyrenees in 812. Emperor Louis was at his country house in Dou-la-Fontaine, Anjou, when he received the news of his father's death. Hastening to Aachen, he crowned himself and was proclaimed by the nobles with shouts of Vivat Imperator Ludovicus. In his first coinage model, which occurred from the beginning of his reign, he imitated the portrait coinage of his father, Charlemagne, giving an image of imperial power and prestige in an echo of Roman glory. He quickly enacted a moral cleansing, having sent all his unmarried sisters to convents, renouncing their diplomatic use as hostage brides in favor of the security of avoiding the complications that powerful brothers-in-law could bring. He spared his illegitimate half-brothers and tonsured his father's cousins, Adelard and Vala, locking them into Normantia and Corbie respectively, despite the latter's initial loyalty. His main advisors were Bernardo de Septimania and Ebbo, Archbishop of Reims. The latter, born a servant, was raised by Louis to that position, but ungratefully betrayed him later. He retained some of his father's ministers, such as Eliza Char, abbot of St. Maximinus near Trier, and Hildebold, Archbishop of Cologne. He later replaced Eliza Char with Hildwin, as abbot of many monasteries. Louis also named Bento de Anian II Benedict, a Visigoth and monastic founder, to help him reform the Frankish Church. One of Benedict's main reforms was to ensure that all religious houses in Louis' kingdom adhered to the rule of Saint Benedict, named for its creator, Benedict of Nursia, the first Benedict. In 816, Pope Stephen IV, who succeeded Pope Leo III, visited Reims and again crowned Louis. Thus, the emperor strengthened the papacy, recognizing the pope's importance in imperial coronations. Ordinatio Imperii. On Maundy Thursday 817, Louis and his court were crossing a wooden gallery from the cathedral to the palace in Aachen when the gallery collapsed, killing many. Louis, having barely survived and feeling the imminent danger of death, began to plan his succession. Thus, 3 months later, he issued an Ordinatio Imperii, an imperial decree that laid out the plans for an orderly succession. In 815, Louis had already given his 2 eldest sons a share in the government, when he sent Lothair and Pepin to govern Bavaria and Aquitaine respectively, although without the royal titles. Now, he began to divide the empire between his 3 sons and his nephew, Bernard of Italy. Lothair was proclaimed and crowned co-emperor in Aachen by his father. He was promised the succession to most of the Frankish domains, and would be lord over his brothers and cousin. Pepin was proclaimed King of Aquitaine. His territory also included Gascony, the Mark around Toulouse, and the municipalities of Carcassonne, Autun, Avalon, and Nevers. Louis, the youngest son, was proclaimed King of Bavaria and the neighboring marches. Pepin of Italy was confirmed as King of Italy, a title he had been allowed to inherit from his father, Charlemagne. If one of the subordinate kings died, he would be succeeded by his sons. If he died childless, Lothair would inherit his kingdom. In the event that Lothair died without children, one of Louis' youngest sons would be chosen to replace him before the people. Above all, the empire would not be divided, the emperor would rule supreme over the subordinate kings, whose obedience to him was obligatory. With this agreement, Pious tried to combine his sense of unity in the empire, supported by the clergy, and, at the same time, offer places for all his children. Instead of treating his sons equally in status and land, he elevated his firstborn son Monteiro above his younger brothers and gave him most of the empire. Beginning of the reign of Louis the Pious. At the beginning of Louis' reign, the many tribes, Danes, Arbitrites, Slovenes, Britons, Basques, who inhabited his borders were still in awe of the power of the Frankish emperor and did not, therefore, dare to provoke any trouble. In 816, however, the Sorbians rebelled and were quickly followed by Slavomir, chief of the Arbitrites, who was captured and abandoned by his own people, being replaced by Seyadrag in 818. However, Seyadrag also revolted against the Franks in alliance with the Danes, who were becoming the Franks' biggest threat in a short space of time. The greatest Slavic threat was gathering to the southeast. There, Pious da Passavia, Duke of Pannonia, assaulted the border on the Drava and Sava rivers. The Marquis of Friuli, Cadola, was sent against him, but he died in campaign and, in 820, his marquisate was invaded by Slovenes. In 824, several Slavic tribes in northwestern Bulgaria recognized Louis' authority, and after his reluctance to resolve the issue peacefully with the Bulgarian ruler Ometeg, in 827 they attacked the Franks in Pannonia and recovered their lands. At the extreme southern limit of his great kingdom, Louis had to control the Lombard princes of Benevento, whom Charlemagne never subjugated. On the southwestern frontier, trouble began early, when in 812, Louis the Pious crossed the western Pyrenees to settle matters in Pamplona. The expedition headed north, where he narrowly escaped an attempted ambush organized by the Basques at the Roncesvalles Pass, thanks to the precautions Louis took. Seguin, Duke of Gascony, was then deposed by Louis in 816. Seguin was replaced by Lapus III, who was deposed in 818 by the emperor. In 820, an assembly from Quasi-Sois decided to send an expedition against the Caliphate of Córdoba. However, Hugo, Count of Tours, and Montefredo, Count of Orleans, were slow to act and the expedition came to nothing. Death of Louis the Pious. Louis fell ill shortly after his last victorious campaigns and retired to his summer hunting lodge on an island in the Rhine, near his palace in Ingelheim. Louis the Pious died on June 20, 840 in the presence of many bishops and clergy and in the arms of his half-brother Drogo, while forgiving his son Louis and proclaiming his son Monteiro emperor. Disputes ensued between the surviving brothers, ending in a civil war that lasted until 843 with the signing of the Treaty of Verdun, in which the division of the empire into 3 administrative regions was resolved. West Francia and East Francia became the nuclei of modern France and Germany, respectively. Middle Francia, which included Burgundy, the Low Countries, and northern Italy, among other regions, but was short-lived until 855, and was later reorganized as Lotharingia. The dispute over the Kingdom of Aquitaine was not fully resolved until 860. Louis I, the Pious, was buried in the Abbey of St. Arnold, in Metz, taking advantage of a tomb from the 4th century with a frieze representing the passage of the Red Sea. The monument was transferred to the new monastery in 1522. It became known from a drawing by Claude de Chastillon, from around 1614. In 1672 it was further modified, and in 1793, during the French Revolution, it was destroyed, although some fragments are still there. Preserved in the Museum of l'Arc d'Or. Family and descent. Louis I, the Pious, married twice, the first with Ermengarda de Hesbaye, my 36th grandmother, 22 times my grandmother, daughter of Ingermano de Hesbaye and Edviges de Bavaria, from whom he had. Monteiro I, married to Ermengarda of Orleans and Tours, my 35th grandparents, 22 times my grandparents, daughter of Hugo III of Tours and Eva of Auxerre. Pepin I of Aquitaine, my 35th grandfather, 14 times my grandfather, married twice, the first to Ingiltrude de Madrid and the second to Ringarda. He also had a daughter from an unknown mother, Ermengarda di Aquitania, married to Herodo, Count of Poitiers and Avenia. Alpeda married Bagau de Paris, Count of Paris, my 35th grandparents, 15 times my grandparents. Retruda married Gerard of Oven. Hildegarda married her sister's husband. After her death, Gerard of Oven, my 35th grandparents, 14th times my grandparents. Louis II, Germanicus married Emma of Bavaria, my 35th grandparents, 7 times my grandparents. The second marriage was to Judith of Bavaria, my 36th grandmother, 15 times my grandmother, daughter of Gelf I of Altdorf and Hedwig of Bavaria, daughter of Otto of Saxony and Emma of Anglichgau, from whom he had. Gisela de Franca married Everardo de Friul, my 35th grandparents, 13 times my grandparents. Charles II, the Bald, King of France, my 35th grandfather, 14 times my grandfather, married Ermentrude of Orleans, my 35th grandmother, 13 times my grandmother, daughter of Odin I of Orleans, Count of Orleans, in 842, however she died in 869. In 870, Charles II, the Bald remarried, this time to Requilda de Provenca, my 35th grandmother, 5 times my grandmother.